Hello, welcome. I'm artist Lisa Christensen with Watercolor Cards. I have a following on Facebook with over 55,000 members in the watercolor card community on Facebook, and I love it so much. We have so much fun learning and painting together. And this video is all on how to paint birds and how to use granulating watercolor. It is so much fun. There's a lot of texture, and we're just going to have a lot of fun painting some birds. I'm also going to give you a line drawing of a bird that you can download on the watercolor card community on Facebook, and it's a Facebook group, so come join along and we're just gonna have fun painting. Alright, so this is my granulating watercolor palette. I bought some Shminke Granulating Watercolor in a tube, and I put that pigment into the wells of an empty palette, and this is the palette that I chose. So these are the colors that I specifically chose for this granulating watercolor. Basically, granulation is there's a lot of texture that comes with the watercolor. Sometimes there's two colors because the colors separate. It is just so much fun to paint with. Watercolor is so beautiful when you can use granulating colors, and I really love Shminke granulating colors, so I have about almost 20 colors that are granulating. They make me so happy, and the granulating colors are perfect for nature because a lot of times you just get that beautiful nuances in watercolor because of nature. So that's what I'm doing. I'm swatching my watercolors. I love the Tundra colors and the Volcano Red and Violet. I also have Deep Sea Blue and Deep Sea Violet. They come in, like, they're curated in packs of like 4 or 5 colors, and so what you see right now is the Shire one that I'm swatching. Shire Green, Shire Yellow, Shire Blue, and Shire Olive, I believe. Anyways, so much fun to paint with, and they granulate. They just change. They don't really change colors, but they dry with a lot of texture, and it's just beautiful. I really love the hues, and it's worth its weight in gold in my opinion. And I just recently got the forest blue and green and gray and brown, so I am swatching those colors out as well, and you can kind of see them kind of changing colors. It's just so much fun to paint with. So if you have not used granulating colors, I highly recommend it. I recommend getting the tubes. You get more variety out of that than in a pan set, but those are my swatches. You can see the different colors, and you'll see them more when we paint the birds. All right, so now that I got my watercolor palette ready, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paint some swatches. So this is just volcanic, or nope, I'm using Violet Sea, Deep Sea, Violet Deep Sea, and I'll be using another blue, a Deep Sea Blue as well. So I'm just wetting my paper. Granulating watercolor, as you can see, loves to swoosh on the paper, and then I always like to blend it in with another color because then we get really beautiful effects this way, and it's so much fun to see it. But you see that beautiful granulation. So as I was playing around with my granulating colors, I chose to illustrate some birds that I have seen in my backyard for like a nature journal page, just for my memory, and I just wanted to remember some of the colors that I chose. I especially love the red-bellied woodpecker and the blue jay. Of course, they're just stylized with the colors, but I really wanted to paint with the colors and see how they went. Alright, so for this project, I supplied you with a line drawing of some birds, and these are very open-ended. In fact, I am making a cardinal for this side view of this bird, and I wanted it to be very open-ended so that you could kind of make your own bird the way you wanted it to be. But you have the body of the shape at the size of an A2 cards. So I will then cut the watercolor paper down to the A2 size card, And this is just a trace drawing. I am using a light table, but you could also use graphic paper, or you could even trace it like on a window. I have done that multiple times, and this is just a great way to paint different birds and to enjoy the process of painting. I know a lot of people that don't love to draw, so I'm making things a little bit easier and a little more open-ended. So if you wanted to change up the eyes or the shape, you can, but there's a general shape to go with it. And so what I'm doing is I'm just using my art table to trace the birds, and you'll see that those are the line drawings, and I cut them down to an A2 size base. And what I'm doing with this one I'm calling the Morning Dove. It is one of the prettiest shapes, I think, although sometimes I think this could be a blue jay too. But I'm using Tundra Brown, or Volcanic Brown, sorry, Volcanic Brown, to get a nice good layer on. And then I wanted to just leave the belly pretty much as it is. So I'm just going to let the watercolor do its thing. You see it can bleed in. That makes me so happy. I love that granulating that's happening. There's some beautiful effects because of the water. And the granulating watercolor, you want a lot of water. The more water, the better it's going to move and play on the paper, and you're just going to get a lovely look for it. So once I do that, I go to the next card. This really wasn't too long of a process, but the process was well worth it. And so I'm just going in there, adding some water so that the paint has places to go. And I'm going to use Tundra Violet for this one. It is one of my favorites. It has some beautiful, beautiful violet tones, but a little bit earthy. It's just a really pretty hue that I love, and I think Shminke did an amazing job with their watercolor. I'm very, very happy to use this palette as often as I can. And I wanted the white of the belly to stay pretty white, so I'm just going in there, softening up those edges, and I'm going to make the top of the bird darker. And so I'm just using wet into wet to make that happen, just in case. What I'm doing now is I'm just adding kind of basically another layer, but I'm just being very careful, and I also want the water to stay in where it's at. So when I feel like there's something else I can do, I put it away and I do something else. I paint something else. Now I'm using Tundra Orange, and this is a very orangey, brownish color, but it has some beautiful texture to it. It has a little bit of pink tones to it. If you really, really, really look closely, it does. But I just enjoy it for the orange and for the browns. You get some really beautiful colors that you can't normally get with other colors, other tube watercolor. Granulating watercolor, you can kind of see that orange and that almost pinky color. But that's what it does. It separates on the paper. You let it kind of mix and mingle on its own. Wet into wet with granulating watercolors is one of my favorites. And so what I'm doing is I'm just blocking in more color. I know I want my wings to be a little bit darker, so I'm just blocking in some of that color. It's looking lovely. And I'm also taking care of where the beak is, because I don't want the beak to necessarily, I want it to stand out. So for this cardinal, I'm using the Volcanic Red from Shminke, and then I will also be using the Volcanic Violet because it has a lot of red to it. But look at that granulating. I hardly have to do anything to get it to granulate. It is by far just one of my favorite paints to use, especially in the red. Another tip for using granulating watercolor is non-staining, so it will not stain your paper. At least my Shminke watercolor doesn't. I don't know about other granulating pigments, but in general, granulating pigments will not stain the paper, and it's really easy to lift. So you can kind of make some boo-boos and then go back and fix them. So, all right, back to what I'm calling the nuthatch. We are going to add the background. The background sometimes is more important than the subject, only because it's the background. And that is what I'm doing. I'm getting the whole side of the paper, the whole rest of the paper pretty much wet. And I'm going to drop in Desert Green. It is one of my favorite greens. It turns this bright or this deep forest green color, but it will also dry with some browns. So it's really great for forest colors. I cannot tell you how many times I've used this in my paintings. It is so fun to paint with. And I love it because you can kind of layer it and it'll just turn either brown or green, and you can't control it, but it is so fun to play with. And then I'll just add some beautiful washes to it. It's just a fun thing. I love using washes with granulating colors because you just never know what you're going to get. It's just a magical time to paint with. And you can see that I'm having a lot of fun with it, but eventually I have to just kind of chill and stop. And that's going to be the background. As you can see, they kind of look like trees, and I'm just going to go back in later and develop those tree branches just a little bit to give it the essence of the tree, right? All right, so I just used some Tundra Violet for that. And I'm just using a damp, clean brush to remove some of that violet, just so it looks like a snowy atmosphere. Now what I am doing is I'm going to, with the Morning Dove, I'm going to also continue doing the background. And this one I want it to be icy and blue. And so, but before that, I wanted to get another layer of the Volcanic Brown on. I really love the granulation that's happening, but I needed it to be a little bit darker. So I went in with one more layer and made it darker. And now I will let that dry. Next, I'm going back in with the sparrow bird that I'm using, and I'm just going to fix a little bit. I wanted a little bit more form to the wing. And I'm going to go back with the Volcanic Brown. I really like the Volcanic Brown. It has some really pretty brown tones and orange tones, and I really think that it works well for birds, actually. And the birds that I have been seeing in my backyard are like, they're called crowned sparrows, but they have this dark, and it's just a two-tone bird, and I think two-tone birds are so fun to paint with granulating colors, because you can just get the texture and the color to just be yummy and happy and magical. So that's what I'm doing. All right, now that the cardinal is dried, it is time for me to work on the background, and I'm gonna do kind of the same thing that I did with the nuthatch, but this time I am just getting the whole back kind of wet, and I start at the beginning of the cardinal, and I want this one to feel icy and cold and wintry, but with not a whole lot of extra I want the value to be really strong. So as I was finishing up that cardinal, this one is a smaller medium brush. I'm using like a size, probably a size 6, and I'm going to start with the trees. But the cardinal, I did the same thing with the cardinal as I did with the nuthatch, but for this one I wanted to get some of that darker, I wanted the bird to really pop. So I'm getting a smaller brush and I'm just adding some of that detail in. And I don't know if you pay much attention to nuthatches, but they are so fun to watch. And they have this two-tone purpley gray, bluish color. And so that's what I was going with. And then they have this really cute tail, and I just accentuated it. That's not really how the nuthatch's tail looks, but the the tail was super cute. I had to do something fun. So anyways, but we're just getting a second layer on, and if you really wanted it dark, you could do another layer. All right, one more layer on this cute little sparrow. I really wanted it to be dark. These sparrows that we have are, they're very two-toned, and they're just fun. They're so fun to paint. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm just kind of accentuating where that two-tone ends and starts, but I also wanted it to just be part of the painting. So it's a process. You gotta keep going and know when you went too far and not go that far. But for the most part, this is just the same Volcanic Brown that I was using, just to get that beautiful texture, that beautiful depth that I was looking for. And I think I got it with that one. Now we can go on to the backdrop as soon as the background, as soon as we're done. For the morning dove, I'm going to do kind of like what I did with the cardinal, and so you'll see that in a little bit more detail. And I'm just going to start with the bottom. I am using Tundra Violet, which is so fun to use. I thoroughly enjoy using Tundra Violet. And I just wanted a spot where the bird can feel like it's sitting, and there's a little bit of shadow, but it's also very snowy out, so I'm going to give it that lack of starkness, so it looks like the snow is really there. And that's how I did that. I just used my brush and I used the water around it to give it some form. And now I'm going to go in and just go around the whole bird with just water on my brush. And I'm making sure that my water is plenty enough. And then I can let that same Tundra Violet go on the page. So what I did is basically it looks like I have two different colors going on, but what I did was I just made a horizon line, and that was the line of color. And then I know that we always see the sky a bit more darker up ahead, up above the horizon line, and so that's why I did that bead of color. And then I can just let it kind of do its thing. So that's the atmospheric perspective that really works for cards like this. And you'll see that I just splattered a little bit. I wanted it to be snowy, maybe icy. I just wanted a nice, like, loose feel in the background. Like maybe it's snowy, maybe it's just trees in the background. I don't know, but I really like it, and it turned out lovely. I always go with splatter when I don't, when I need something but not a lot, I'll do splatter. All right, same thing here. Now I'm just gonna add a little bit around and let that dry. Just let that dry. Now we can do the sparrow. We're gonna do the same thing kind of through the sparrow. We're gonna add that really pretty icy blue. We're gonna let that run on the wet paper. And then this is just a fun little thing. I'm just gonna add more blue to the background, and that's about the simplicity of this card. There's not a whole lot going on, but it sure works, and it works really well. And you'll see that I'm gonna clean up my edges just a little bit, just to make it calm and clean. Again, I'm adding a little bit more of that blue because it is just so darn lovely. It's so fun to paint with. It reminds me of ultramarine blue, but with more granulation. And I thought, why not splatter some brown and see what that does? And I liked it. and it will dry lighter and softer and just gives it a little bit more. Now what you'll see is some Winsor Newton iridescent medium, and I just splattered a little bit on the background and it will just kind of do its thing. I really love using iridescent watercolor for skies and for the ground when it's snowy, and so that is what I'm doing. I'm just splattering a little bit here and there. And we're done with the iridescent. But wow, what a beautiful background. And look at all that granulating that's already starting. It's just lovely. All right, back to the nuthatch. We're going to do the background of the trees. And I'm just taking my little dagger brush and I'm just making trees. And I'm not too concerned about where the trees are and where they're not. You just want it to make it, you just want it to be believable. And I am taking a clean brush and I'm just kind of adding some brush strokes to that tree to make it look more dimensional. Just a nice little trick that I use. Yeah, and you'll see it's just a fun little, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I do like flicking my brush for these branches, and I don't have to do a whole lot because the background really did most of the work for me. I just have to do like little V's and little trees that I actually enjoy painting. So this is quite a lovely background. It's looking really well. Alright, we'll let that dry in just a second and we'll be ready to go to the next one. Oh, and now it's time to give him a little bit more form. And if you wait just a second, I'm going to give him a nice cute little face. Just like that. So perfect and so fun. What you're seeing me do here is I'm just taking a wet, clean brush and I'm just shaping the shape of the bird a little bit to get those lines crisper and cleaner. Alright, so for the beak, I'm using the Tundra Orange for this one. I wanted it to be kind of the same shade or hue as the belly, and I'm making those eyes a bit more prominent. And you'll see me, I'm just going to add a little bit of different browns in. I decided I didn't like that, so I'm just going to lift that up, which is perfect. And I even wanted to do a line, but I didn't like that either. So you'll see me erase my markings a little bit. And then I just decided, okay, we're just going to have a simple little beak with a little bit more layering towards the top of the beak and pretty much call it done. So that's how I got the dimension of the beak. And then I will do the same for this mourning dove. And for the cardinal. For the cardinal, I'm actually using a darker pigment of Volcanic Red. And I'm just really getting in there to make it bright and cheerful and getting that belly to look really, really nice. Then I'm going to use that Volcanic Violet and just start shading in where the wings are and maybe the top of the bird, so then so it just gives it a lot more dimension. Yeah. And once that dries, I will work on the beak. The beak is just that Tundra Orange again. And now I'm just going to add a little bit of that darker, like Tundra Violet into it. And I'm actually painting a tree trunk here. I'm just finding like where I think my little trunk, my little tree trunk should be. It's just from my imagination. I don't have a picture or anything. I just kind of did it. Now I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to go back in and clean up some of the area that I didn't like, and now I can go in with my beak, and this is going to be a pretty simple beak, but it still gives it a little bit more definition. I'm using Volcanic Brown, but a thicker bit of it, and that's just I'm gonna work it in and kind of shape it so it has some form and some sort of depth to it. I'm lifting up some of that. I've flooded the beak and now I'm lifting it up so it can get that really pretty effect. And of course I had to do a cute little eyeball because it's not a realistic type of bird anyways, but I thought the little cute eyeball would work. And now I'm just going to go back in and add a little bit more lines for that tail feather. And now for the cardinal, for the end result, I'm just going to add that darker brown. I'm actually using Tundra Violet. They're really thick, and I'm going to start with like an eyeball, and I'm just going to go in with my brush and add that cardinal, the signature part to the cardinal, which is like the dark bit around the beak, and then the beak will also pop a bit more because of the black. So it's a great way to paint a bird that way. And we're done. All right, well, I'd love to know which one your favorite was, and would you use granulating watercolor? It's so much fun to use, and it's really a magical time when we can paint with granulating watercolor. Anyways, I'd love to know your thoughts. I'd love to know if you have a favorite bird. What bird is it, and would you paint that, and how would you paint that? Anyways, give this video a big like if you want more videos like this, and you can find the line drawing on the watercolor card group, and we will talk to you real soon. Thanks so much for watching. Enjoy your painting, everyone.